Let's talk VDML with KJR.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Let's Talk VDML. My name's Mark Pedersen. I'm here with Stan Potums, and today we're going to be talking about standards and in particular ISO 42001. Of course, if you're interested in this whole series of discussions about responsible AI and AI assurance, don't forget to do the whole like and subscribe and all that sort of thing on whatever platform you're listening to this on. But with that out of the way, Stan, tell us a little bit about what is ISO 42001?
Yeah, cool. So ISO 42001 is the first international standard for managing AI systems. It was published very late last year, so December 2023. And it's definitely picking up a lot lately. What it basically does is it's providing a framework for organizations developing, using, deploying, maintaining AI, and doing that in a proper way. So it's ethical, it's secure, it's transparent. Focus on risks and opportunities, and it's sort of on that level as ISO 27001, really trying to cover this or equip an organization to manage that whole thing properly for AI.
Yeah, so 27001 is the standard around information systems security, or information systems management. So it's typically the standard, at least in Australia, that a lot of people would use to make sure that they're running a secure, if you like, network, and not just a network, but the way that they manage all of their information in their organization, whether it's in the cloud or elsewhere, right? So that's kind of the parallel you're saying is, if you're familiar with the sorts of things you might need to do for managing your information securely, then this is a similar set of practices and controls, if you like, for AI risk. And if you're putting in an AI system that's part of your overall computing, usage, then that's where this sort of fits in.
Yeah, exactly. And just like ISO 27001, ISO 42001 is also one of the only standards which you can get certified for as an organization. Not at this very stage, so we're at October 2024. We're still waiting sort of for the national certification bodies and ISO themselves to finalize the I guess the ecosystem around certification, but that's going to be part of possible with ISO 42001 as well.
Yeah. And so why is that actually, like, why would certification be important? Like, I can understand if you're running a business and you want to deal with someone else and they have, security concerns around cybersecurity, then they might also ask you as an organization, what kind of security practices do you have in place? And if you say, oh, we're ISO 27001 certified, then that immediately means you've got all of these sort of controls and practices in place, and someone comes and audits you regularly and all that kind of stuff. So it's a way of sort of demonstrating that you're a safe pair of hands. So again, does that analogy sort of cover over with AI? I guess it's early days, we don't quite know, but
I'd say so. So there's AI has its own set of unique challenges. There is, of course, the security aspect, but then there's also a lot more uncertainty in those AI models versus traditional software. There's bias that could creep in, etc., etc. And so if you follow and get ISO 42001 certified, you'll mitigate those risks. And for key stakeholders, that could be sort of an extra factor of trust. Okay, this organization has gone through all these steps to ensure they minimize those risks unique and challenges unique to AI. So we can trust them over someone who hasn't showcased, done their due diligence and put in place proper processes. I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, the analogies are pretty strong because this is not just for people who are building bespoke AI, is it? Like it might also be for people who are just kind of like consuming a third-party AI system, but using it for their data and using it as part of their business practice. How does that sort of like fit in?
Right. We're talking about the benefits of the organization
Well, I guess
doing this, or more from the consumer side of things?
I'm thinking more about organizations. I mean, I guess what I'm thinking about is that, hey, even if you're, using Microsoft Azure or AWS to host your information systems, from say an ISO 27001 perspective, just because you're using Microsoft or using some other third-party product, doesn't automatically make your usage secure. You would still need to demonstrate, when we onboard people, we onboard people securely, and when we offboard people, we close those accounts down, and we don't write passwords and stick them on sticky notes on the computer, or we do encrypt our data. So you could certainly use Microsoft Azure or AWS like unsafely and like not encrypt sensitive data, or just have a shared password that everyone uses and all that kind of stuff. So using a third-party product doesn't automatically make you safe. There's certain things that you have to take responsibility for. But I guess there's certain features that are part of those systems that, make it easier to do the right thing. Do you think that it's going to work in a similar way with 42001, where people might be using like an AI product that someone else has developed, but then there's certain things that they still need to do to make their usage responsible?
For sure. And we'll see now we're in this AI hype. So every product is called AI or AI enabled, but actually AI is embedded in a lot of software already. And I guess in the coming years, we won't talk about AI as we're talking about it now. So it'll be embedded. And as mentioned before, it comes with those risks. There is bias, there is data privacy concerns, there might be IP concerns, etc. And what ISO 42001 does, it does give an organization all these controls to sort of I wouldn't say a checklist per se, but it does give you a whole bunch of items or controls you can implement to make sure you mitigate those risks of your staff interfacing with AI products. And we're talking about things like policies. What can we do on a policy level to reduce the risk? We can talk about testing of those systems. If we procure a new system, what type of testing should we do? And should we put constraints or guardrails in place for these systems? And ISO 42001 definitely gives you that a very good, framework to implement all those different controls. Yeah, absolutely.
So that it does sort of fit in. Like there seems to be a lot of regulation emerging. And we've talked recently in other episodes about the voluntary AI safety standard and the proposal at the moment for mandatory guardrails for high risk AI. So the sorts of things like the 10 proposed guardrails within Australia around, ensuring something that's free from bias, assuring that it's being tested appropriately and is monitored and so forth. Those sorts of things really like are built, if you like, off the back of 42001, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of overlap in ISO
Yep.
42001 and all the policies and guardrails, etc., that Australia is putting in place, and globally as well. So even with the EU AI Act, we see a lot of overlap with ISO 42001. And I know there's a lot of talk, even internationally, like how do we make sure people are compliant with the regulation, and ISO 42001 gives sort of a way for them to facilitate that sort of checking if you are indeed following the minimum practices, if that's applicable to you. Yeah.
So the way that it's sort of, the jigsaw puzzle fits together is that, within a given jurisdiction, whether that's Europe or Australia, the US, Canada, etc., there is, an emerging, like legal framework, regulatory framework, but essentially, and those different jurisdictions might have like slightly different emphasis on different things. Australia's trying to use more of a like principle-based approach rather than just having lists and so forth, and we're still to see exactly how those things will work. But essentially, if you move yourself towards ISO 42001 compliance, so you're looking at the standard and then planning for that to be something that you're practicing as an organization, then that pretty much means that you're going to be able to go, yep, we are actually compliant. We can demonstrate, we can provide evidence, and that, I guess, is what it all comes down to when you do want to demonstrate compliance. It's about evidence, right? Evidence that you actually follow these practices.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see that confirmation even in those in the national AI framework, etc. They're actually referencing ISO 42001 as a good example to follow and start your processes.
Yeah. And I guess to try and make this a bit more concrete, like the sorts of things where this starts to apply is, there's a common example that's been talked about frequently. If you're, say, using an AI tool to sort through lots of job applications. So people are sending in CVs, and obviously that's something that you would want to maybe fine tune to your specific business or to the specific roles within your business. So if we look at one of those, fairly standard guardrails that we see in the Australian frameworks, but also elsewhere, that the use of AI should be, free from bias, then it's really, you can't just go, oh, we'll take this HR CV bot off the shelf and use it. You would need to supply it with some data to say, hey, here are the kinds of CVs that fit this role. And it is on, the responsibility of the organization to go, hey, we've vetted the data that we're giving to this AI, that it's not going to be biased. It's not going to be preferencing, candidates on the basis of gender or race or other sorts of things that might be an issue, and might be just historically there was a bias, and now we want to move away from that. We don't want to entrench it or amplify it through the use of AI. So then you would need to, look at that data, look at how that system is being used, maybe do some testing, maybe do some monitoring to make sure that it actually does fit within some guardrails. And that allows you to say, hey, we've controlled for bias and this is how we've done it. And you can be transparent about that. Is that sort of like a good example from your perspective?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and 42001 will sort of tell you what sort of checks you want to have in place or what you want to have done. It's not going to tell you how you have to do that fine tuning and that testing, but it'll tell you sort of it'll allow you to do a gap analysis and sort of confirm that your processes are actually taking into account the potential historical bias, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Because you've actually done the certification to be a lead ISO 42001 implementer. So, when you say that, the standard doesn't necessarily tell you, it tells you what evidence you might need to collect, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. Is that sort of something that you're bringing to the table? Like if someone says, oh, we actually want to put these controls in place, is that some of the expertise that you or other people who get that certification would go, oh, like, here's how we would, test for that, or how we would collect that evidence?
Yeah, I reckon. And it's interesting. So we have this. It's one thing to say you have to have a policy in place and you have to have systems in place to keep track of your data provenance and data cleaning, DID process, etc. But if you haven't really worked in this space, it's very hard to understand some of those unique challenges or certain risks that could creep in. So I've been fortunate enough to have worked as a machine learning engineer for a few years, and then have actually taken the course to do lead implementation of 40001, and that equips me to now do proper, to actually work with all the stakeholders, but then also have a more what's the word, critical eye, to sort of see it's not just giving titles to people and putting a policy in place, but actually sort of verifying if these things actually are solving or catering for the challenges.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's not about what we don't want is just to over-regulate, but for those regulations to actually not reduce instances of actual harm or not reduce risk. So the whole point of all of this effort is to make sure that if someone is using some kind of AI application, they're using it, safely and responsibly, and it's not causing harm. So because you've worked across a whole range of different sort of machine learning applications, including things like, analysis of like medical imaging, but also looking at how like security cameras that might be used for like public safety or workplace health and safety systems, how those things work. And there's lots of ways in which those things could go wrong or in which the data could be misused, right? So is there ways where you think, as if people start moving towards that sort of compliance, that in those settings, by putting these compliance or controls in place, that's actually going to deliver benefit both to the business and to the end consumer? What does that sort of look like?
Yeah, I think so. Even from my own experience, I feel I'm still doing the whole machine learning piece, and I feel since having done that ISO 40001 course and sort of internally doing an audit to sort of see where the gaps were, definitely made me much more confident in my processes, and I feel like the quality, I can see the quality improved just because of just a proper process of checking things end to end.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying there is that even by using those controls around things like where are we getting the data from, how are we, setting up the test data, what testing are we doing along the way, is actually producing a better outcome in terms of the application of that machine learning process.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
I would recommend people to go through an ISO 40001, whether or not you have to from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah. So it's delivering benefit if you are working in that sort of like higher risk kind of space, which could be, say, medical or in a legal setting or a public safety setting, something of that nature. Then it's likely that there will be some kind of mandatory requirement in the near future. We will anticipate that that'll come into effect. So it's worth thinking about now. But yeah, as you say, even if you're not following these processes, will actually just make your adoption of AI more manageable and more effective.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, I mean, I guess that all sounds, like a great outcome. What are some of the challenges? What are the things that make this difficult?
Right. Okay. AI is very broad, and there is a lot of different hats you have to wear. Like a lot of organizations are using, deploying, and developing AI systems. So it's not just like, okay, I'm gonna procure an AI model. What do I have to do here? I'm gonna, but maybe I'll, like you mentioned before, if I'm gonna fine tune a model, suddenly I'm a developer in certain ways. So really getting a proper overview of what AI actually means to your business is a bit of a challenge there. There's a whole lot of different definitions of AI. Luckily, uh, there are some good definitions to say what is AI, considered AI and what's not, but it is a bit of an exercise, and there might be some ambiguity for certain products as to where they fall. As mentioned before as well, it tells you what controls to have in place. It doesn't tell you how to implement them, which could be a challenge if you haven't got an awful lot of experience in the space. And of course, it's a very fast moving space. So I guess when the initial things like the EU AI Act and ISO 40001, etc., were being written, there was no such thing as ChatGPT. So people weren't really talking about or thinking about generative AI. Who knows what the near future brings and how that's gonna impact this whole thing. So it's gotta be you have to be flexible. It's a very continuous process. It's something that's not just I'll implement it once, so I don't have to look at it again for another 5 or 10 years, because you definitely do want to see what's happening. Even the use of AI we'll probably see in the coming months and years. People using AI in a way we hadn't imagined. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Exactly. So I think that's a great takeaway, that this is something that's not just a one and done, but it's something that as we all move forward into that sort of AI everyday kind of world, then understanding all of those different use cases and those different responsibilities. As you say, you could be a deployer or just a consumer of AI in one setting, but actually kind of effectively a developer in another. I'm thinking of those sort of OH&S issues where you might have a, say, security camera that can detect if there's a person in a space, but then you want to be able to detect if there's a forklift in that space for safety reasons. But you may need to fine tune or really adapt a model to work specifically with the lighting conditions and the space that you're observing and the kinds of forklifts that you've got. That might not be something that's available off the shelf. And then suddenly you've moved from just a user or a deployer to effectively a developer, and that could have additional controls or responsibilities. So it's worth being aware, I guess, of where you sit and how you manage the risk, and that's something that we're all still learning together.
Yep.
Well, I know that we've almost out of time. Any other sort of thoughts about the future? I mean, you talked about it's going to be a continually evolving space. What's exciting you about the coming weeks, months, etc., around AI and AI management?
Yeah. Okay. I guess there's a bit of a hype, so there's a lot of over promising. And I feel companies who are jumping in the hype and don't have a plan around this governance or whatever, they'll get a bit disappointed, I think. And I feel like we're coming to a phase now where people are like, all right, I'm not gonna think this will magically solve all my problems, but now we have all these frameworks out there. There's this regulation, and there's this education piece that's happening everywhere, and it's gonna enable people to actually understand how amazing this technology can be if used properly. And I think we'll see a lot of productivity gains within, like I said, in a properly managed way. And yeah, I think it's a great time where we're sort of figuring out, like, we've released this powerful thing. Now we're figuring out how to actually make proper use of it, and combining that will be in a very nice. That's what's exciting me. Just being able to finally use this powerful tool usefully without getting disappointed if it doesn't deliver what some technology giants have been promising us, I guess.
Yeah. Getting into that, plateau of productivity because this is what this is for, and it's actually doing what it says on the tin, and I'm getting benefit. The citizens are getting benefit, the environment's getting benefit, all those sorts of things. Yeah. Look, I know we're out of time, so we could probably talk, heaps more. But I'm sure we will do that again in future. So, thanks, Dan, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again.
Thanks, Mark.